all came beard. Life begins at conception, and every life is precious to God. We believe it's our duty and a privilege to stand and fight for the sanctity of life, and we hope you'll continue to stand with us. For all you do to defend the unborn, thank you from AFA.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
This is American Family News. I'm Steve Jordahl. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is forcing Ukrainians to flee their homes and escape into nearby Eastern European countries. Fox's Lucas Tomlinson reports from Lviv in Ukraine.
So far here in western Ukraine, the cultural capital, home to one of the oldest universities here in Ukraine, we have seen some refugees flooding in from the capital. We've also seen a number of nervous residents. We've seen long ATM lines, long queues at the grocery store and marketplaces. Really just a lot of nervous people who are not expecting this full-scale invasion that the Pentagon and White House have been warning about for the past 2 weeks.
Ukrainians are sheltering in place in subway stations and bomb shelters. Viewed from Paris, London, and Washington, the events unfolding in Ukraine may seem like a new Cold War taking shape in Europe. From the Baltic countries, it looks much worse. To Estonians, Latvians, and Lithuanians, particularly those old enough to have lived under Soviet control in the days of the USSR, Russia's belligerence toward Ukraine has some worry that they could be the next target. The escalating tensions, which preceded an attack Thursday, brought back memories of mass deportations and oppression. While Putin has not publicly expressed any ambitions to reassert Russian control over the Baltic countries, many Estonians, Latvians, and Lithuanians worry he might want to regain influence across all former republics of the Soviet Union, the collapse of which he once described as a tragedy for the Russian people. More than half of abortions done in the U.S. recently have been done with pills rather than surgery. Fox's Jessica Rosenthal reports.
In the year 2020, 54% of all abortions in the country were done with pills, up 10% in 1 year, as more people relied on telemedicine during the pandemic and the FDA allowed abortion pills to be mailed out to people. A 2-drug combination is permitted for abortions up to 10 weeks of pregnancy. The Guttmacher Institute, which compiled the report, says 16 states have newly proposed laws regarding medication abortions, and 3 states, Arkansas, Arizona, and Texas, do not allow abortion medication to be sent through the mail. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
A judge has ordered the parents of a 15-year-old boy charged with killing 4 students at his Michigan high school to stand trial on involuntary manslaughter charges. Rochester Hills District Court Judge Julie Nicholson said following Thursday's preliminary examination for Jennifer and James Crumley that she found enough evidence to send their case to circuit court. They're accused of making the gun used in the shooting available to the teen and failing to intervene when he showed signs of mental distress at home and at school. Ethan Crumley is charged as an adult with first-degree murder, assault with intent to murder, terrorism, and gun charges in the November 30 shooting at Oxford High School. Pro-life voters in Pennsylvania are wondering about a U.S. senator they helped put in office. Details on that from AFN's Charlie Butts.
Democrat Senator Bob Casey has presented himself as pro-life. Maria Gallagher of the Pennsylvania Pro-Life Federation tells AFN the voters are troubled by a message he posted on Twitter.
He would vote for debate for the Women's Health Protection Act, which really should be called the Abortion Without Limits Act, because it would bring about virtually abortion on demand for any reason during all 9 months of pregnancy. It would wipe out pro-life laws. It would mean widespread taxpayer funding of abortion.
There is also a report out that Casey attended a fundraising event for an abortion advocacy group.
And so we are very worried that he's caving into party pressure to support abortion on demand. That hasn't been his stand in the past. He has been pro-life in the past, and we urge him to be pro-life in the present and in the future.
The bill is actually a response by Democrats to the possibility the U.S. Supreme Court will overturn Roe v. Wade, which legalized abortion in all states. I'm Charlie Butts.
A roller coaster day on Wall Street. At one point, the Dow was more than 900 points in the red, but made a sharp recovery late in the day. Investors were encouraged that the latest round of sanctions on Russia were rather weak and unlikely to have dire financial consequences in this country. The Dow finished the day 92 points to the good. The Nasdaq at one point down more than 400 points, ended the day up 436, and the S&P 500 gained 63 and a quarter. More news at afn.net. For American Family News, I'm Steve Jordahl.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Dr. Matt Ayers, president of Wesley Biblical Seminary. Did you know that there's a way to attend seminary where you don't have to write papers and you don't have to get graded? When you audit a course, you get to participate in the course and learn without earning the degree. You can sign up to audit any course at Wesley Biblical Seminary for only $250. Whether it's discipleship or the Old Testament or theology, you can audit a course this coming semester. Go to wbs.edu to sign up to audit. That's wbs.edu.
Darkness is not an affirmative force. It simply reoccupies the space vacated by the light.
This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
It should be uncomfortable for a believer to live as a hypocrite.
Delivering people out of the bondage of mainstream media and the philosophies of this world.
God has called you and me to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment. Let's not miss our moment.
And now, the Hamilton Corner.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Hamilton Corner here on American Family Radio. A lot is happening in the world, but it is times like this that we must make sure that we are anchored, grounded, and rooted in the Lord's Word. My name is Abraham Hamilton III. I am your host, or the host of the Hamilton Corner, joined by 2/3 of the Corner crew, because you know they make it do what it do, baby. We will not take calls today because I have a lot to unload for today's program. So I just want to say that right from the onset of the program. So much is happening in the world. And right now, many of you, if not most of you, are transitioning from your part-time jobs where you generate an income to your full-time jobs where you cultivate an outcome. And as you are making that transition, may I encourage you to do so with full intentionality, knowing that you have an opportunity to faithfully discharge your lifestyle of worship and obedience to our Lord and King in execution of his commission, starting right in your home. Starting right in your home. I failed to mention that the 2/3 of the Corner crew that's here. To my left is Mr. J. Mack. To my right is the one, the only. You know him, you love him. When you see him, you want to hug him. Mr. Bobby Rosa. Today, guys, we are going to turn our attention to the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew chapter 14. Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 through 23. Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 through 23. This is Matthew's recording, and you'll recall Matthew was the IRS agent. Not really. It was no IRS, but it was the tax collector for the Roman government at the time, so maybe with the RRS. That's a joke, folks. And so Matthew had a particularly accountant's type of mind when he recorded the gospel that he recorded. This portion of text that we're going to delve into today is Matthew's recording of Jesus is walking on the water in the midst of, the Greek phrasing is for the Euroclydon, the wind that arose as Jesus' disciples were on the water. And I pray that you are strengthened and encouraged and anchored by our Lord's word today, by in the face of all that is transpiring, that you refocus your attention on our God and King, who remains a consistent source of stability in the face of tumultuous storms that surround us. All right, I'm going to read the verses first and then kind of unpack them a little bit. This is immediately after the miraculous feeding of over 10 to 15,000 people. 5,000 men were present, but when you consider the reality of women and children being there, the Bible notes 5,000 men were present. But when you consider the reality of women and children who were there as well, the feeding of 5,000 really exceeded over 15,000 people, most likely, and included leftovers. I love that in the text. All right, verse 22. Immediately, he, Jesus, Yeshua, the Messiah, made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But the boat by this time was a long way from the land. The Greek word there for way is stadia, which means about 607 feet or 185 meters away from the land. All right, I have to throw meters in there for our European brethren that's listening to the show. All right. It says, when evening came, he was there alone, but the boat by that time was a long way or a stadia away from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them, walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." And Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he, Peter, saw the wind, or some translations say when Peter saw the strong wind, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, "Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Now, man, I got a lot to get to, and I got about 8 minutes to do it. The first thing I want you to note is when Jesus performs the miraculous feeding of the over 15,000 people, I've explained before that is not merely a miracle of reproduction. It's actually an ex nihilo miracle of creation. Because Jesus took and ex nihilo provided what was not there. Very similar to the miracle of turning the water into wine. There is a scientifically different molecular and chemical compound that's present in the wine than it was the water. Jesus added information molecularly to turn high quality H2O, shout out to Bobby Pouchet from Waterboy, to turn high quality H2O into something else. All right. All of that transpired by sunlight. At this time, days began at sunrise, days ended at sunset. It was because it was getting late in the day that Jesus instructed his disciples to feed the crowd that had amassed in the first place. All right. When he dismisses the crowds, the Bible says Jesus enters the mountain to pray. Most likely when he enters the mountain to pray, it's certainly before sunset. It might have occurred as the sun was setting. We know that from the context in the scripture, because immediately in verse 23 says, after Jesus dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. So he enters the mountain before the very next verse, when the very next sentence begins. And it says, when evening came, he was there alone. The scripture is showing us that Jesus is in the mountain before evening came, and evening occurs while he's still in the mountain. Then the Bible goes on, verse 24, but the boat by this time was a long way from the land. All right. The boat is beaten by the winds and beaten by the waves. And verse 25 tells us that in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus came to them walking on the sea. I've explained this before, that because of the way that the Romans divided the day, the fourth watch of the night was somewhere between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. What the scripture is in a compact, succinct fashion providing for you is the reality that Jesus follows what only can be described as a miraculous success. He follows that up with an all-night prayer meeting. He entered the mountain before sunset. He's in the mountain from about sunset until somewhere between 3 and 6 a.m. And at that late juncture, he comes walking to his disciples on the sea. It also gives you an idea about how long his disciples were struggling in the water. because of the Euroclydon. While Jesus is praying, the disciples are struggling in the water. Those context clues, those time clues are there to help you understand the depth of Jesus' prayer commitment, but also to let you see why and how the disciples were so afraid, struggling hour after hour in the water, trying to make it to the other side. And then all of a sudden, you see the form in the shape of a man strolling on top of the high-quality H2O, of some more high-quality H2O. So when they see this man-like figure approaching them, the Bible records, Matthew records, that they were afraid. And they cried out in fear, "Ah, it's a ghost! It's a ghost!" And then Jesus responds, oh my gosh, I get goosebumps every time I read this. Jesus responds immediately, verse 27 says, but immediately, in light of their outcry and fear, Jesus responds immediately, saying to them, "Take heart, it is I." Then he says, "Do not be afraid." Those words are powerful and they're important. Why is that? When Jesus says, "Take heart," and it is followed by the English translation, "It is I," the Greek phrasing actually is ego eimi. Why is that significant? Because when Jesus says, "Take heart, it is I," he's not merely identifying himself to his fearful friends. He is actually quoting himself from Exodus chapter 3. Remember when a prophet named Moses, was sent to be a deliverer in Egypt? And Moses said, now, upon whose authority am I supposed to tell this Pharaoh, this king, that he no longer has the wherewithal to hold your people? Yahweh through the burning bush said, "You tell Pharaoh, I am who am." Ladies and gentlemen, isn't it amazing that the Greek phrasing ego eimi is nothing more than the Greek phrasing of I am who am? When Jesus says, "Take heart, I am who am," he's not merely saying, "Hey, this is your homeboy Jesus from the third ward." He's saying, I am the one by whom the very H2O, by whom the very wind that you're struggling against, by whom this very sea exists. I am the one who created it. I am the one who maintains it. I am the one who sustains it. And as a result of that reality, look how he concludes the sentence, "Do not be afraid." You stuck in the sea, in the wind, and I'm walking on it because I made it. This is a sovereign I am saying, Jesus declaring his divinity in this very moment, not merely for theological musings, but to throw the rhetorical, the theological, and the realistic, life-saving wrath to his sons, to his disciples, to his loved ones, and say, listen, you can cling to my word because my word is life. My word is more substantial than the very elements of my creation that you happen to be struggling with at this very moment. My word to you is more potent, more sustaining, more substantial than the very thing that appears at this very moment to cause you difficulty. That's why you're afraid and I'm walking on it. Then Peter, with a light bulb of revelation, and I hear it in the old English accent, Lord, if it is you, bid me come to you on the water. Lord, may I experience tangibly your superiority over the elements, Lord. Lord, may I join you in no longer fearing these aspects of your creation. And look what Jesus says to him. Peter, come. Oh, brothers and sisters. Peter, come. And guess what? Peter hops out and starts standing on the stuff that they just been struggling with all night too. Now, isn't it amazing that the same wind, these same waves were percolating before Peter ever had the idea to get out of the boat? But Peter, now standing on the water in the midst of the waves, the Bible records that in the midst of the storm, he adjusts his attention away from the one who summoned him and refocuses again on the wind. Look at verse 30. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid. Now, guys, what is it about the wind? It's the same wind that was roaring and blowing before he ever got out of the water. But in that moment, the scripture is revealing Peter allowed his attention to be taken away from the one who summoned him and now to refocus himself back on the thing that provoked fear in the first place. And at that moment, he began to sin. Brothers and sisters, I am keenly aware there's war in Ukraine. There's non-kinetic but ideological and philosophical warfare in our country. The heathen is raging all over the world, but I want to tell you that the one that we serve still walks on water. The one that we serve still speaks to storms and storms stop. And my encouragement to you is to enlarge your perception of our God and King. Refocus your attention on our God and King. Refocus your focus on the one who summoned you and who's granted you eternal life. Because if you don't remember, let me remind you that there's so much more to living than what we can taste, touch, see, and smell. There's eternity that hangs in the balance.
Here's some great news. If you missed the deadline to sign up for health insurance, or if, like a lot of people, you just have a plan you're not happy with, you still have a choice. It's called MediShare. It's a Christian healthcare sharing program. There are more than 400,000 members now, and they love it. In fact, MediShare has double the customer satisfaction rate compared to that of health insurance. And MediShare really is the gold standard when it comes to healthcare sharing. It's been around more than 25 years. Members have shared more than $4 billion of each other's medical bills. Plus, MediShare is for you. It has saved its members billions by advocating on their behalf. Best of all, the typical savings for a family is around $6,000 a year. So if you think you're stuck with a high-cost health plan that doesn't have much to offer, think again. MediShare has a 98% customer satisfaction rating, and you are invited to be part of it. Call now. 833-44-BIBLE. That's 833-44-BIBLE. 833-44-BIBLE.
Hey, I'm Mark Hall from Casting Crowns, and I've seen how destructive alcohol and drug abuse can be. But I've also seen Jesus set people free from those addictions.
I couldn't afford my pain pills, so I started using heroin. That completely ruined my life. I've overdosed multiple times, and you'd think that would stop me, but I still continued to go back. And I found myself sitting in a jail cell, and that's when I knew I needed to change my life. I came to Teen Challenge, and God just really got a hold of my heart. Christ plays a role in my recovery daily because I no longer say the things I used to say, think the way I used to think. I'm completely changed for the better.
Adult and Teen Challenge helps people find freedom from addictions to drugs and alcohol through the power of Jesus Christ. If somebody you love is ready to experience new life and freedom and hope, you can call toll-free 1-855-END-ADDICTION or visit teenchallengeusa.org. You're listening to American Family Radio.
You know, most tours of our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., don't include the spiritual heritage of our country, the Christian history of our nation, the people, the places, the events that God used to birth America. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. My friend, historian Stephen McDowell of the Providence Foundation goes with us on these tours, and he talks all along the way. He tells you about the people, the places, the events, and he does so from a Christian perspective. So you're invited to join us on one of these spiritual heritage tours in June and September. We also go to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown on a separate tour if you want to do that as well. So for all the information, go to spiritualheritagetours.com. Again, simply the website spiritualheritagetours.com.
Shining light into the darkness. This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner. Abraham Hamilton III here. Let me remind you, if you have not registered yet, what are you waiting for? The Marriage Family Life Conference 2022 is upon us. It will be July 7th through the 9th at the Bancorp South Arena in Tupelo, Mississippi. And as I've said to you earlier this week, guys, it is well worth your investment of time. It is, in my opinion, one of, if not the preeminent family training conferences in the world. The goal is to equip the entire family, your entire family, to stand firm and to stand fast and to be effective ambassadors of our Lord and King, Jesus Christ, in the time that he's placed us in right now. MarriageFamilyLife.net is the website, and I encourage you to go there now to register, because I don't want you to be in the number of those who don't get to register, and then next thing you know, it's sold out. All right? MarriageFamilyLife.net is the website. All right. Had a lot to get to today. Most of you know. If you do not know yet, last night, Russia formally invaded Ukraine. They launched an attack via land, sea, and air, striking not merely the eastern portions of Russia, but even launching missiles toward the capital city of Kiev. Ukraine is a nation with 44 million people. Russia has also taken, last report I saw, taken Chernobyl, the site of the most egregious nuclear disaster to date. Russia has seized that area. I have a lot to get to in this regard, but I want to, and I started this earlier this week, but I want to do a more thorough walk down recent memory lane. It's not ancient history. These things are recent, and you guys have heard me quote the Maya Angelou maxim numerous times. When people show you who they are, believe them. I am mystified by the number of people who are surprised at what Putin did. I heard, some pundits heard Bill O'Reilly. I couldn't believe he did it. I didn't think he would do it. Like, what are you talking about? Couldn't believe he did it. I heard people just shocked. It's not rational. Like, listen. One of the fundamental flaws of regressivism en masse is its theological commitment that leads to a flawed anthropology that denies the sinfulness of mankind. Regressivism always assumes, unless you happen to be conservative or a less melanated male who happens to be attracted to women, that's the only evil in the world to regressives. But they deny the reality that there is sinfulness in the world. And it's amazing that they think, regressives I'm talking about, they think that they can persuade evil to be non-evil, right? I never forget when describing Muslim terrorists, the conclusions by many were, we just need to give them jobs. They're telling you they're killing in the name of their false God. There is no God, by the way. But you're saying they need jobs. They're saying, no, we need to purge the world of infidels in their zealous theological commitment to their eschatological conclusions, and you're saying you want to give them jobs. You have Vladimir Putin, the KGB agent. Guys, listen. I know I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I am no military strategist. But I do know a little bit. Plus, I did stay in the Days Inn once or twice in my life. Yeah, Holiday Inn. Excuse me. See? Yeah, see, that's how I didn't get anything. Because it's the Days Inn, I got nothing. Guys, what's the fundamental component of espionage? Spying. You know what it is? Lying. And I told myself I'm gonna try to keep my top on today, but I can't make any promises. Lying, guys, is as natural to being a KGB agent as breathing is to being a human. Okay? Now let's walk through recent history, shall we? In 2008, I'm so glad, Jeff, you got the graphic of the map of Russia versus the Ukraine and Belarus, because I want to explain to some people some things there. In 2008, Vladimir Putin, as the president of Russia, what did he do? He invaded and occupied portions of Georgia. Not the state in the southern United States, not with a university that just won a national football championship in college. The European nation of Georgia. I know a lot of us may not be well-oriented geographically with these areas, but Georgia is a nation that is immediately south of the Russian border. It is a nation that is between Russia and Turkey. Georgia is northeast slightly of Turkey and south of Russia. Okay? Putin invaded Georgia, occupied large swaths of that territory. Back then, there were rumblings about his desire to reestablish the United Soviet Socialist Republic, known as the USSR. How did the world respond? And more specifically, how did the United States of America respond? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. Do you recall that immediately thereafter, beginning in about 2009, there was one newly elected president, one Barack Hussein Obama, and his Secretary of State, she or shall never be named president, she or shall never be president. And what foreign policy posture did they take towards Russia? Remember, just having invaded and occupied the sovereign nation of Georgia, the United States government adopted a policy called reset. We want to have a reset. We no longer want to have this stalemate with Russia. The Cold War was so 1980s, you know? Just like mom jeans and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches without the crust cut off. We're in such a new day. I mean, it's the skinny pants regime starting afresh. Let's just have a reset. Guys, the only way you can attempt a full-on reset in policy is if you think the Dalmatian has changed his spots. Vlad is no longer Vlad. And guess what that indicated to good old Vlad, who is not good, even though he is old. You know what that told him? Oh, word? They not tripping over me taking Georgia? Bet. And guess what happens when the United States of America says we want to lead we want a new regime and a new foreign policy of reset with Russia? Guess what the rest of the world does? Because the United States of America is the big dog on the global stage. The rest of the world goes, aww. Remember the old 1980s cartoon Care Bears? Care Bears stare. This is not the U.S. This is not the USSR. There are no Russians trying to infiltrate. This is new country. All right. Fast forward a little further. I played the audio for you. I'm not going to do it again now because I got a bunch of other audio I got to get to today. Fast forward a little further. One Barack Hussein Obama was campaigning. And I want you to connect these dots because you have to see this line of continuity. One Barack Hussein Obama was campaigning for re-election. Well, I'm going too far. Before that, I got it right. Campaigning for re-election, during the campaign for re-election, Barack Hussein Obama was in a debate with Mittens, put him up Romney, right? What's the greatest existential threat on the national stage, on the global stage? Romney says Russia. Barack Hussein, remember, the one who had already initiated this policy of reset after Putin had taken Georgia. You have to understand that. Putin invades Georgia. U.S. says, let's reset. Romney says, Russia is tripping. Obama says, the 1980s have called, asking for their foreign policy back. The world laughed. Ha, 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 ha. Belly laughed. Ha, ha, ha. And Mitt the Mormon, isn't he with his fancy underpants? Isn't he just a joke? Ha, 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 ha. Next thing we know, during the same 2012 campaign election season, Barack Hussein Obama is caught on a hot mic talking to Dmitry Medvedev, who was then the president of Russia in 2012. What is he caught saying? Tell Vladimir, I'm running for re-election. This is my last election. After my election, I'll have more flexibility. I said to you before, why in the world didn't our media ask, what exactly, Mr. Obama, smooth, long-legged Mac Daddy, what exactly do you need flexibility for? What is Vladimir pressuring you about that you need flexibility? Why can you do something after the election that you can't do before the election? It seems to me that what you're indicating is the things that Vladimir is pressuring you to do, if you did it before the election, you probably wouldn't get reelected. If we really had a media in this country, those questions would have been asked. But nobody says anything. We're just swooning. Oh, you're so smooth. Look at Obama's walk. Look at his tan suit. Oh, look. Oh, the world is great. The whole while, you got Vlad plotting on the resurgence of the USSR. The whole time. Nobody asked, why do you need this flexibility, man? What is he asking you to do? What are you trying to do? Fast forward, because it ain't over. Because remember, the second term of the Barack Hussein administration went from 2012 to 2016. Notice the pattern, folks. Vlad invades Georgia. The regressives in the Democrat Party say, reset. Vlad is continuing to pressure Obama. Man, you got to make it happen. Man, we got to do this. Man, we got to do this. You tell Vladimir, after my re-election, I'll have more flexibility. Medvedev says, I'll transmit this to Vladimir. Right? What happened soon thereafter? 2014, beginning in 2013. Beginning in 2013, and a lot of other things, the Ukrainian people got rid of a Ukrainian president that was friendly to Russia, got rid of him, start saying, we want to join NATO. Putin don't like that. What does he do? Starting in 2013, ultimately accomplished in 2014, while Barack Obama's in office, the dude invades and takes over Crimea. Guys, that is a part of the sovereign territory of the Ukraine. Getting back to the map, if you're watching the broadcast, you see Ukraine in orange, right? You know that big blue thing below Ukraine and the very bottom tip of it? That's the Crimea region. Crimea was the gateway and is the gateway from Eastern Europe and that section of the continent to the Black Sea. Without Crimea, Russia has no access to the Black Sea. Gaining access to the Black Sea gets them closer to their homeboys in Turkey and other places to allow them access to the Mediterranean Sea. Putin takes Crimea. Did you hear the Obama administration say we're going to rescind the reset? No. You hear nary a peep. You hear nary a peep. I played to you the laughable audio of ice cream eating Joe Biden during the campaign season saying, oh, Vladimir Putin doesn't want me to be president because as soon as I'm president, he knows he can't bully the U.S. and our allies anymore. The dude is in office barely over a year. And remember the things that led up to it. One of the first things Mr. J. Robinette does when he gets into office, shuts down the Keystone XL pipeline. The next thing he does, signals America is no longer interested in energy independence. Not only that, the Biden administration greenlights the construction of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which allows Russia to pump oil and natural gas directly from its nation into Germany and Eastern Europe. The Russian economy, by and large, is shot except for one thing: energy. I'm going to get to that in a moment. Biden does all of these things. What does that tell Big Bang P in Russia? Oh, we got another one around. Oh, yeah, I forgot. This dude was the vice president when I took Georgia, right after I took Georgia, and he was the vice president when I took Crimea. This punk ain't going to say nothing. Did I fail to mention he just witnessed the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan when the United States of America, the nation that is known around the world, you may say a lot of things, but there's two things you know. We keep our promises and we never leave our own folks behind. Oh. See, what had happened was we leave our old we left our folks behind in Afghanistan. We didn't keep our promises. Guess what that tells the world and Big Bang P? Man, I don't know if we can trust America anymore. That's another point. Of course, David way to point it out. Cannot forget the sale of uranium, which allows the enrichment of nuclear fission to the Russians. Certainly we can't forget that. So guess what all of these things tell Mr. Putin, who, remember, 2008, take a little bit more. Take a little Georgia. 2014, let's go ahead and take that Crimea. The Ukrainians needed weapons. Obama sent them blankets. 2022, and isn't this remarkable? A week after the Winter Olympics that happened to be in Beijing, China. Gee, this is Vladimir. Hey, how may I help you, Mr. Putin? We're going to let these Olympics run out. But as soon as that's over, nuck if you buck. Oh, okay. Wait till the Olympics end. The week after, invading a sovereign nation. Guys, all of these things combine to indicate to Mr. Biden, to Vladimir Putin, they ain't gonna do anything. So let's do it. And I'm not saying that America needed to do anything militarily, but there are a lot of tools in our tool belt that should have and could have been deployed before we ever got to this point. But many of those tools were not only taken off the shelf, they were dismantled and revealed to old Vlad, man, what tools? We don't need tools because we remember you're a kind guy. You don't want to leave. You want to listen to the remainder of this show because I got a lot of audio that I thought I would get to in that segment, but I'm happy to get to in this segment that lets you know that weakness in the Oval Office creates a void that is filled by despots and tyrants around the world.
American Family Studios was started back in 2011 as a way to advance the Christian worldview into an increasingly media-rich culture.
Media is like such a powerful tool to communicate the gospel. I love writing stories, getting in my office, and just thinking, how can we portray this concept of who God's character is? And to get to use the gifts that God has given me is really a joy.
AmericanFamilyStudios.net.
Hey, moms and dads, are you at your wits' end? Hi, this is Mark Gregston with Parenting Today's Teens. I'm so grateful for the partnership we have with American Family Radio. We share a common goal to bring hope to hurting families through the life-changing medium of radio. Be sure to listen Saturday afternoons at 4:30 Central on American Family Radio. Find help and hope for your family with Parenting Today's Teens.
Christians and government. This is David Wheaton, host of The Christian Worldview. Canadian truckers and others are protesting the government's COVID mandates, parking in the capital city of Ottawa, demanding individual liberties be restored. They're up against Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, a far-left globalist who says COVID is, quote, an opportunity for a reset. This is a test for Christians. Romans 13 says every person is to be in subjection to the governing authorities. But it also says rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. So when government punishes citizens for refusing to inject a substance into their bodies, what's a Christian to do? Hear an interview with a Canadian pastor about this issue at thechristianworldview.org, and then tune in this weekend for another topic that will sharpen your worldview.
Listen to The Christian Worldview with David Wheaton, Saturday mornings at 8 Central on American Family Radio.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starnes. Stand by for news and commentary next.
Everyone's goals for advancing their education look different. At Liberty University, we've helped thousands of students like you earn their dream degree. So no matter what your goal is, we can help you get there. With over 450 degrees from the associate to the doctoral level to choose from, most of which are 100% online, you'll find what you need to succeed. To discover which degree might be the best fit for you, text degree to 49595. That's degree to 49595.
All the colors of the rainbow except for one were represented in Arizona State University's production of The Color Cabaret. The theater department's performance did not feature any white people, none. The university actually banned all white singers, actors, and dancers. Arizona State University defended the discrimination, saying The Color Cabaret was a chance for Black, Indigenous, and other minority students to create performances that speak to their experience, diversity, and equity. That's how they defended the ban. The same thing happened at Harvard University. No whites allowed at a music seminar sponsored by Nike. It's part of a nationwide effort to purge universities of white privilege. It's also very much against the law. The Civil Rights Act clearly bans discrimination based on race, color, and national origin. It's a sad thing that's happening on our university campuses where discrimination is not only permitted, it's encouraged. I'm Todd Starnes.
The Hamilton Quarter podcast and one-minute commentaries are available at afr.net. Back to the Hamilton Quarter on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner. Abraham Hamilton III here. I'm going to get to a little bit of audio today because these events have unfolded, but it's not as if there is nothing that can be done. There's still a lot of tools in the tool belt if we would but use them. If we would use them. Now, I'm going to begin. I'm going to get to Mr. Biden's comments because, and I'll read some from the transcript, but I want you to hear the audio himself, the audio of him speaking today himself, because he was discussing the usage of sanctions, and he's announcing, oh, now we're really going to unleash these sanctions now. He talked about, the invasion of the Ukrainian sovereign territory, but I'm going to start by providing you some audio from the British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'll just make this statement categorically now and expound on it in a second. Because in Mr. Biden's comments, which I'm going to provide in a little bit, he talked about, we're going to levy these sanctions, we're going to do all of these things. He declined to remove Russia from, it's called the SWIFT, the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications, which is, unfortunately, the globalist connection of these various nations to the international economic system. Some describe that move as being kind of like the nuclear option to stop Putin and his advancement in Ukraine. And it's interesting that concerning the application of sanctions, you have some European nations that don't want to see Russia sanctioned, like Germany and Italy. Could it be because these nations are massively dependent upon Russia for energy that they are like, I see what's going on, but my name is Bennett and I ain't in it. Then you have, and I shared a little bit of this with you earlier this week, but when you're talking about the things that emboldened Putin and Russia, not only do you have the Biden administration turning off the spigot of our own energy producing, under former President Trump, for the first time in well over 4 decades, the U.S. had become a net exporter of energy. Did you know in 2021, following the policy shift by the Biden administration away from policies that would aid the U.S. in being energy independent, did you know that the U.S. bought barrels of oil, for example, over 232 million barrels of oil from guess where? Russia. Over a million plus barrels of oil from guess where? Iran. A million plus buying barrels of oil from Saudi Arabia, from OPEC. Why would we do this? It shows Mr. Putin and the world that the U.S. is no longer prioritizing energy independence. Why is that so important? I'll let Prime Minister Boris Johnson tell you in his comments about Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It's clip 1. Go.
Today, in concert with our allies, we will agree a massive package of economic sanctions designed in time to hobble the Russian economy. And to that end, we must also collectively cease the dependence on Russian oil and gas that for too long has given Putin his grip on Western politics. Our mission is clear. Diplomatically, politically, economically, and eventually militarily, this hideous and barbaric venture of Vladimir Putin must end in failure.
Guys, this should cause all of us to ask the question, why weren't y'all doing these sanctions before? You act like you just found out there were 190,000 Russian troops on a Ukrainian border. You just realized that? Boris? Biden? Angela? You just realized that? And did you notice, guys, these were comments provided today by Boris Johnson in the UK, the Prime Minister of England. What did he identify as the sole thing that has enabled Russia to gain a stranglehold over Western politics? Energy. I'm going to tell you, and listen, this is not a time to be a partisan hack, all right? I don't know if Mr. Biden or his people listen to this show, but I hope they do. I want to give you some advice. What we need to do now, not yesterday, now, is we have to make moves to crush Russia economically. We don't need to send troops. We don't need to try to fight a kinetic war, is what I'm saying. He's saying they're going to send 7,000 troops to Germany. All right. But what we need to do now is we need to crush Russia economically. Today, Now, I'm not mad that Mr. Biden didn't say this in his speech today necessarily, because I am not a fan of you telegraphing your strategy to the world. You can provide general principles, but I don't think you should telegraph your strategy to the world. But today, Mr. Biden should be on the phone with every energy producing company in America. Today, Biden should force his regressive Green New Deal, tree-hugging, tree-worshiping people to say, listen, enough of that foolishness. This thug just invaded another country. He needs to announce today that every regulation, every prohibition, every limitation on drilling, mining, and producing fossil fuels and energy resources are lifted immediately. Today, he needs to be talking to every one of our allies all around the world today, saying that the big dog is back on the block. If you need oil, we got you. We will incentivize you to get your oil from us. What we need to do is to destroy Russia economically now. Not the longer you wait, the longer you allow the supply lines and supports from China and Lil Kim, what they call them, and all them other people to start trickling in. Cut it off now. Today, not tomorrow, now. You can't fight a war if you don't have the money. Shut down the money today. All of the AOCs and all these people, shut up and sit down. The dude has invaded a foreign country. We could deal with the spotted owl and the little leopard and the saber-toothed wombat tomorrow. Today, we're drilling. Today, we're fracking. Today, we're getting our natural gas. We have the largest reserves, one of the largest reserves in the world. We have more natural gas, more oil than the entire Middle East combined. There is no reason for our allies to get their energy supply from Russia. There should be no reason why Germany and Italy should be skittish and hesitant on applying sanctions. Today, it's not like this is brand new. Economic stranglehold led by the Americans is what led to the demise of the USSR in the first place. This isn't new, guys. But what is new, for the first time in recent history, the world now is a little bit hesitant as to whether or not they should be able to rely on the U.S. Italy and Germany hesitating and applying sanctions? Today, it needs to happen. Now, I want to get to a little bit of Biden audio. There's no reason why we can't do this. There's no reason. For the sake of time, I was going to play, I'll play this first one first. This is Mr. Biden today discussing the invasion on Ukraine. Clip number 4, go.
Vladimir Putin has been planning this for months, as we've been saying all along. He moved more than 175,000 troops, military equipment and positions along the Ukrainian border. He moved blood supplies into position and built a field hospital, which tells you all you need to know about his intentions all along. He rejected every good faith effort the United States and our allies and partners made.
Okay, Bob, I got to stop. I can't take no more.
Security concerns.
If you know that, what are you doing? Why are you talking about sanctions today? What? You know why? Because they think, he's not really going to do anything. And then I have to play this audio for you because finally, after he provided his prepared remarks, which, by the way, he doesn't write, nor does he edit. He just reads what they give him. Who's really running the White House? Goodness gracious. Mr. Biden literally said out of his mouth that no one expected sanctions to do anything. Which should raise the question, if the sanctions didn't prevent anything from happening in the first place, why do you think it'll work now? But I want you to hear from his own mouth before I go off. Clip 5, go.
Mr. President, you didn't mention SWIFT in your sanctions that you announced. Is there a reason why the U.S. Isn't doing that? Is there a disagreement among allies regarding SWIFT and whether Russia should be allowed to be a part of it?
The sanctions that we've proposed on all their banks are of equal consequence, maybe more consequence than SWIFT, number one. Number two, it is always an option, but right now that's not the position that the rest of Europe wishes to take. Cecilia Vega, ABC.
Sir, sanctions clearly have not been enough to deter Vladimir Putin to this point. What is going to stop him? How and when does this end? And do you see him trying to go beyond Ukraine And a second question I'll just give to you now. This statement that he gave last night, the threat that he gave, the West will face consequences greater than any you have faced in history. Is he threatening a nuclear strike?
I have no idea what he's threatening. I know what he has done, number one. And number two, no one expected the sanctions to prevent anything from happening. It has to show, this is going to take time, and we have to show resolve so he knows what's coming. And so the people of Russia know what he's brought on them. That's what this is all about. This is going to take time. It's not going to occur. He's going to say, oh my God, these sanctions are coming, I'm going to stand down. He's going to test the resolve of the West to see if we stay together, and we will. We will, and it will impose significant costs on him.
So if that's the case, why are you announcing new sanctions? And to the earlier comments, if you knew all of this is coming, why didn't you prepare the American people for what was coming? Why? And okay, we're gonna have these crippling sanctions, and then he says, well, really nobody expected the sanctions to stop anything from happening. Then why do them? Which brings me back to my first point. I mean, Mr. Biden today said a lot of things I support, I appreciate. But sir, if you don't try to choke off their economy by using our own energy resources to liberate the European continent economically, not even to mention how much of a boon to our own economy it would be, not to mention how it would affect the reversal of inflation, 40-year higher inflation in our own country, where we will again become a net exporter of energy, and dare I say it, that we profit from our energy resources. You could adjust and reverse the tide now. You could create a surging economy in the face of war and in the face of inflation by making one policy adjustment. Then Lurch reared his ugly head. Did I say that out loud? I'm sorry. John Kerry is what I'm talking about. The climate czar. This dude was asked yesterday about this, and you are not going to believe what he said. And I'm not going to even tell you. I'm going to just let you hear it for yourself. It's clip number 3.
I'm very concerned about Ukraine because of the people of Ukraine and because of the principles that are at risk in terms of international law and trying to change boundaries of international law by force. I thought we lived in a world that had said no to that kind of activity. And I hope diplomacy will win. But massive emissions consequences to the war, but equally importantly, you're going to lose people's focus. You're going to lose certainly big country attention because they will be diverted, and I think it could have a damaging impact. So, I think hopefully President Putin would realize that in the northern part of his country, they used to live on 66% of a nation that was over frozen land. Now it's thawing, and his infrastructure is at risk, and the people of Russia are at risk. And so I hope President Putin will help us to stay on track with respect to what we need to do for the climate.
Guys, this is what this man says in the face of Putin invading another sovereign nation. Think about that. In the face of Putin invading another sovereign nation where bombs are blowing up the capital of Ukraine, when people are being shot and killed and blood is filling the streets and you have deaths on both sides, this dude says his concern is the emissions event and its effect on the climate. When you have Vladimir Putin revealing that he's the same old thuggish, ruggish bone he's always been, John Kerry's concern is about climate, and he's hoping that even with, a little murder, what's a little murder? A little murder going on, a little death and destruction and invasion and tanks and guns and missiles and planes. I sure hope Vladimir Putin will continue to join our globalized effort to fight climate. Folks, if you're listening to me and you voted for Joe Biden and them, I hope you are really paying attention. Because when you elect unserious people, when you have thugs like Putin in the world, And they'll say, the most dangerous threat in the world is climate change. We want to make sure we have a world of social justice, and drag queen story hours, and transvestite educational czars. These are the consequences that impact the whole world and our own nation.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American